Hello, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about pastors and the importance and the actual role of a shepherd. Um, Let me start off by saying, pastors, I love you, and y'all are necessary for the kingdom work that we have to fulfill in the earth. Y'all are an important part of what we have to do. I'll start with saying that. What I will also say following is that, and this is for those of you that were actually called by Christ to actually be in that position, not just people who inserted themselves and just been doing some work. But those of you actually called, I thank you for the work that you're doing, or even the fact that you're trying to do it, because a sad reality is that most pastors are not doing the actual work of a shepherd. Not that they don't want to, but because they were trained different than the calling required. And we're going to talk about that. So I actually typed up something. So I'm going to read first and then I'm just going to talk with y'all. So, like many functions, the role of pastor has been warped into a structure and presentation that it was never meant to be. The modern idea of pastor differs heavily from the ancient idea of a pastor. In modern times, the pastor is the leader of the local church and head of the congregation. The success of a pastor today is measured by how many people they can get to be a member in their church, how many people come to church. The more the better, right? Pastors are the head prophet, the mouthpiece of God. They are the chief apostle, the teacher that oversees all of the operations of the ministry. And again, this was not the original function of pastor. The pastor is one of the ascension gifts or fivefold functions that Yeshua gave to the ecclesia for the perfecting of the saints within his kingdom expression. The word ecclesia is usually equated to our modern understanding of church, but they differ drastically. The word ecclesia is a governmental term. That means governing body or assembly of judges, assembly of ambassadors. The role of the ecclesia was to legislate and manifest heaven on earth. It wasn't until they swapped the word ecclesia with koinonia, which means people that gather, that church shifted from a governing body to a congregation. It went from government to religion. This stripped us of our governmental paradigm, which shifted us from being kingdom minded to religious. The modern church is a place of worship and sometimes fellowship. The ancient ecclesia was a governmental outlet, it wasn't a place of worship. The change affected the way that pastors operated. Pastors were or are shepherds. A shepherd is someone that tends to, feeds, and guards a flock of sheep. The flock of a shepherd could range between as few as 3 or as large to, let's say, 500. The role of a shepherd required them to have an intimate relationship and bond with each individual sheep, so they only kept as many sheep as they could build relationship with. The general rule among shepherds is that one shepherd is needed for every 500 sheep. In a practical sense, not much changes. A pastor is the equivalent of a counselor, right? Their job is to tend to the people in their flock, and the duties of that include, but are not limited to, emotional and mental health counseling, healing, whether that's physical or soulish. They deal with healing, protection, and provision, dealing with food and other resources, as well as deliverance. And it is mandatory for them to build an intimate relationship with each of their sheep. The job of a pastor is not to open up a local church, give a sermon once a week, hold weekly Bible study, be the leader of every ministry assignment, be the voice of God in every situation, or most of the things that we were taught that they're supposed to do. Most of the things that we're used to pastors doing isn't actually what their job title is for. Okay. A pastor that you cannot get in contact with nor build a relationship with is not a shepherd. A pastor that cannot heal, whether that's physical or soulishly, cast out devils, protect you, or help those in need is not doing the work of a shepherd. I've worded it that way because I'm not saying they're not called, but that's not the work of the shepherd if they're not doing any of that. I believe that shepherds are 100% necessary. We just need to get back to the original blueprint. And truth be told, most ministries need several pastors, a team of pastors that are assigned to help a specific amount of people and to build a relationship with them. I gave an example, right? Joel Osteen, right? And this isn't an anti-Joel Osteen thing here, right? An example, Lakewood Church has around 45,000 weekly attendance. They would need at least 90 pastors to intimately shepherd that many people. Just giving y'all some numbers, right? So like I said, truth be told, most ministries need several pastors assigned to help with a specific amount of people and build a relationship with them. A ministry with thousands of ministers, but only one pastor is an error. This is the reason why so many pastors are burnt out, quitting, committing suicide, and all types of other stuff, is that they're doing far too much work for what they're actually called to do. We're trained to respect longevity and quantity over alignment to assignment. This by default makes us compete against each other when we should be working together. It has leaders protecting their flock from other good leaders, emphasizing good leaders, because they want to be the only holy influence in their lives, the only voice of God in that person's life. The mission for pastors is nurturing and protecting the sheep. It takes the rest of the functions for us to be whole. The pastor cannot do it all alone, nor were they meant to. And I'd even say they weren't meant to lead the operation either. And I added a side note. Predators cannot be pastors. A shepherd that preys on its flock needs to be removed. Now, let's continue talking about this, right? So that was all the stuff that I wrote. Let's just talk now. So, yes, the actual role of a shepherd is to tend to the sheep, feed the sheep, protect the sheep. Now, usually in the concept of feeding the sheep, they've interpreted that and changed that into being give a sermon. I'll tell you this. How many of you, being honest, have heard sermons that did not feed you? If you're honest, we all have. At least once we've heard messages that didn't feed us, that didn't have anything to do with our current situation. In a room, right? Let's say in a room of 200 people, it might have helped 12. That means the rest of y'all just didn't eat. This means that sermons can't really fill the void. They can't really feed sheep, right? Giving a generalized message once a week can't really feed. Interaction, conversation, right? This is why the work of the shepherd was so intimate. As few as 3 people is a flock. Anything over 500, you really can't manage. And I've talked to some leaders. They're like, "Ooh, I can't do that with that many people." I'm like, that's the point. You need some help, right? And I remember asking this question as a kid before I even knew all this stuff. My city would do this thing called the citywide revival. And I remember asking my pastor before, I'm like, how come y'all don't just do this in general, right? Have everyone meet under the same roof and just cycle y'all through, right? Everyone interacts. And he says something along the lines of, that would be one big mess. And as a kid, I'm thinking, why would that be such a big mess? And then I started to meet a lot of leaders and I'm like, oh, this is why. This is why. They have different beliefs. They have different agendas, and that would clash when it comes time to ruling over the masses. But I remember when they would do citywide, pretty much what that was is all the pastors in the area, for the most part, would get together and hold like a week-long revival. And it was the first time, and I love that stuff, right? Seeing all the pastors together. I liked it, right? Um, that's actually a closer picture of what, if we're going to do the building thing, that's a closer thing to what was originally placed there, was a bunch of shepherds working together for the benefit of the masses of sheep, right? Thousands of people need dozens to hundreds of pastors, right? By default. Now imagine that, right? Instead of having one pastor trying to preach a generalized message, hoping that it's enough to keep people there, what if instead it's a team, right? Once the numbers go up, okay, we need more pastors. Okay, this pastor takes this many families. You have these families. Those families know if we need something, we go to this specific pastor. If we need something from that, we go to there. And that keeps everything organized. I'm actually trying to help y'all, I promise, because I believe that you are necessary. I'm not saying this from a position of competition. I know my calling. I know the work that I'm meant to do. And part of that is knowing how things are supposed to function, bringing the original blueprint back into the forefront, right? When you think about the way that the early church, the ecclesia, operated, they were home to home, house to house. And guess what? The pastors that they had weren't setting up a 501c3 building and having weekly service. That's not how they operated. They met every day, all day. They fellowshipped all the time, specifically in each other's houses. That's a different level of intimacy. And there's a general rule that I'll share with y'all. You can't pastor someone, you can't shepherd a sheep that you don't trust in your own house. You will preach to strangers you cannot trust, right? Truth be said, if you can't trust, if you would never have them in your house, you can't minister to them. You can't really shepherd them. Preaching a message is not shepherding. It's about building relationship. You actually have to get your hands dirty to do the work of a shepherd. They get sick, they're supposed to call you the shepherd. You're supposed to come heal them. You're supposed to come bring some deliverance, some freedom. They're demonized. Hey, it's your job. You're supposed to be the number one deliverance minister that they know, right? They are supposed to call you first. They are supposed to work on it. That's the work of the pastor. It's not the weekly message. It's not the sermon. The sermon doesn't have any priority, not for that role. Teachers, sure. Prophets, maybe. But not really for pastors. Pastors somehow took on the role of the head main speaker. And everyone comes to experience a concert followed by a message. That's not an ancient paradigm. That's a more recent thing. But pastors, if you would adopt this, work together, right? When it comes to other good leaders, y'all need to be working together, not working apart from each other and secretly in competition with each other. Y'all have the same goal, which is protect the sheep, feed the sheep, tend to the sheep. Y'all are passing these duties off to associate ministers and deacons who don't have the calling of pastor, and they actually end up doing the work of a pastor, while the pastor is not. They're just the head speaker, right? You could actually flip that. Let the associate, if y'all gonna do it in that old paradigm, let the associate ministers handle the sermons if y'all gonna keep doing sermons, while you actually deal with the people. Y'all aren't gonna like this. It's okay. It's okay. That's really all I have to share with y'all. I love y'all. Hopefully, y'all can find a way to adopt this, build community, work together. so that we can actually see earth transform to look like heaven, so that we can actually see the ecclesia operate in the way that it was always meant to. I love y'all. You are necessary. You're needed. Until next time, y'all be blessed. Later.